This is the Business Storytelling Show with Christoph Trapp. Name a top 20 storytelling podcast and a top 5% podcast globally. Christoph chats with thought leaders and experts to share tips and tricks that can help you tell your company's stories better to drive business results. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, live streamed on major social media channels, and part of the DB&A television network, available on most U.S. television sets and streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire. Here's Christoph with today's episode. Let's go.
Let's go, business storytellers. How's everyone doing? Fist bump. Let's get today's episode going. And we want to talk about how content technology supports your content operations. Now, this is an interesting topic to me because I grew up in the world way back when. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, older than I'd like to admit. And technology was really just kind of growing up. I mean, I walked around with a reporter's notebook. I can't even imagine taking notes on paper today, seriously. But today, I use all kinds of tools. Restream is one. That's how we bring the show to you. Anchor is another. Grammarly. No offense to some of the best editors in my life, but Grammarly is cheaper and does a better job than some editors. Seriously, like it gives you rephrases and all those different things. So I want to find out how do we use technology to make content operations even easier. Carrie Hane is joining us back on the show. She is now the head of content strategy relations at sanity.io. Interested to find out what that is. Last time she was on the show, we talked about connected content. Today, we talk about content technology. Welcome back, Carrie. How are you?
Hey, Christoph. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So tell us about your new role, Sanity. Is it trying to keep us sane or what is going on?
It is. It's trying to bring sanity to the content management space. So most often we're classified as a headless CMS. We like to think of ourselves as beyond headless, a platform that enables structured content to fundamentally change how people work with content so that it's more efficient, more effective for teams of all sizes to get their content created, managed, and distributed wherever their audience needs it, which is why we're talking about content technology and operations today.
Exactly. And which is everywhere. I mean, I want to get my content everywhere. And I know, some experts out there, even when Joe Pulizzi was on the show, he said, you got to focus on one channel and start there. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I do think you want to get your content in all the different places, which is why we are live streaming on all these different channels and why we're putting it on TV and other places. So tell us about how do we even start with technology? So my perception always is I stumble across new technology that solves a problem. Sometimes I go out and I search for it, but a lot of times, like Grammarly, I didn't use it for the longest time. And then when I started using it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know why I didn't use this before. So how do we determine what technology do we actually need and who has the time to evaluate it all?
Yeah, well, so I think there's those two paths in, right? Like you said, you stumble across it because you've read an article or you listened to a podcast or went to a conference. You're like, oh, that sounds interesting. That's more serendipitous. But then there's people looking for new ways to manage their content. And a lot of people find Sanity and probably a lot of other content platform tools by saying, oh, we need to switch to headless, or we need our content management system isn't working anymore, or it's not being supported, or whatever. So they are doing evaluation. A lot of times it's led by the CTO or the IT team. And that's great. They're the ones that maintain it. But I think what's often missing and what I would encourage people to do is start with requirements. What does your content operations look like today? What do you want to change about it to make it better, make it more effective and efficient for people to do their job? There's a lot of people out there that spend all day creating content, entering it into systems, copying and pasting somewhere else to get it into another system. How much time could be saved? How much more return on investment can you get if you're setting it up right from the first time you enter it? What kind of structure can you add to make sure that you're getting it into Open Graph, that you're getting your metadata right? It's more semantic, which helps with SEO and all kinds of other things, getting you to all the different places where content needs to show up. Obviously Google, but if you're a restaurant, you want your menu to be on, DoorDash and Uber Eats and all the other platforms, Toast. You need all that. So I think starting what do we need to make our content operations work, and evaluating the products against those requirements is going to lead you down the right path.
So I was going to try to find it here while you're talking, but I just can't find it quick enough. So I have a t-shirt that I designed, and it basically says, I'm thinking about content, what I need to create, I'm creating it, approval process, publishing. And that doesn't mean I'm procrastinating, but there's only so much brain power we have, right? If a technology solution is hard to use, that's where my brain power goes. It doesn't go about, hey, what better questions can I ask Carrie? What better content can I create? Are people actually searching for this terminology? Is that what I should be going after? So my point is, technology has to be easy. And I've said this many times publicly. I'd be interested to hear your answer on this. I'm a big believer that content creators, and I know it's not always possible because some CMSs are horrible in that regard. We'll see if you agree or disagree. We can disagree on the show if we have to. But I think they need to create in the CMS. And the reason is why, because then they see how it looks. They see how it all flows together. Drives me crazy when creators write in a Word document, it's not being checked against SEO. It's not being checked against anything, or Google Drive is slightly better. It's still not perfect. How do we make that easier? Or am I just dreaming that that's even possible? I do it all the time, but is that not possible at an enterprise level?
It is definitely possible. So there's a lot of things that get in the way from doing that. One is it's not. So let me say it's possible out in the realm of possibilities. It is not possible in most of the systems that people are using, for one reason or another, whether it's the tool doesn't actually support that, or it's not set up properly, or people don't understand how to take advantage of it. Their workflows aren't right. Whatever, for many reasons, that's not being done. I've actually had this conversation with some of my colleagues and other peers in other content technology platforms about this. That, yeah, people do spend just a small amount of time in the content publishing, where they're entering whatever they've created elsewhere into a content management system and then hitting publish, and it goes off to wherever it goes. And that's for lots of reasons. I do it that way. Right now I'm writing in Google Docs, and then I'll copy and paste that into Sanity when I'm ready to publish my blog post. But we're actively trying to change that so that people can get their system set up the way editors and content creators need to work. You can collaborate in the content management system. That's I know something we don't have yet, and I don't know that any other systems have it, is commenting. You need to get things reviewed. Well, it's hard when you have to read it in one place and then send an email or a Slack message in another place to make comments on something. So that's a huge barrier from kind of shifting it to how do we start creating in the content management system so that you're only typing it once, you're only entering it once. I think so. Technology does need to support that better than it is now. But even I think, that can all happen. That's all great to make it possible. But what's harder is to get people to change how they work. One of the things my engineering colleagues keep talking about, like, well, what do content creators want in their platform? We can give them all of these features. And I'm like, well, if you ask them, they probably want something that looks more like Word, because that's where they're comfortable. So we have to also come at it from the other side and educate and train and guide content creators to create content differently, and to give them tools that make it easy. Just like you said, like, yeah, if they're spending all their time trying to circumvent whatever system they have, then that doesn't leave them time for doing the fun stuff, the things that they want to be doing, the things that are valuable. So it kind of it's from both sides, making better tools and helping people use them more effectively.
So what's interesting about that question too is what do you want? If you just say that to a content creator, right, who writes in Word, it always depends on what your goal is, right? So if you were to ask me that, Christoph, what do you want in your office? And I say, well, I want a better chair. I want to be comfortable. But you're not really asking me if I want to be more comfortable. What you're really asking me is, you're saying, what can I do to help you perform, to create content that performs better? Because here's the true hard reality for all of us content creators, and this hurts. It hurts me too. But the amount of time that I spend on a piece of content does not correlate on how well that piece of content performs. So if I spend 8 hours and nobody reads the damn thing, like, the 8 hours has nothing to do with anything. I do a show with you and everybody goes, oh my God, Carrie is back. Fantastic show. Thousands of listeners. Do you know what I'm saying? And it took us 27 minutes and we're done. I'm going to update an article. I'm going to throw you in there. Like, that's really, really hard. But if you come to me and you say, what do you need in the CMS to create content that's more likely, no promises, more likely to perform? And I truly believe me being able to see the SEO score and the SEO best practices 100% helps me set that content up to perform better. I mean, do people ask content creators that, or do we just think about, oh, we got to get this done by?
It's an interesting question. Honestly, I'm not sure people are asking content creators that question. I think this is a real problem, because people are thinking this as a technology tool, and they're thinking about the developer experience, but not the end user experience. And that's one of the things I'm working to change in my role, both internally for our product, but also externally, so that content people know that they can have different expectations. They don't have to expect their CMS to suck. They don't have to expect to hate it. That if they and so it's bridging the gap between the people who are building and the people who are using, so that they can, it's like they're speaking different languages. So we want to get them to be able to speak just enough of each other's language so that they can have conversations, and content people know that they can ask for certain things. And the engineers and developers who are setting these things up within the big enterprises know that they can ask, and know how to ask, and not saying, well, what do you want? But what matters most to you? Just, I think your question was really great. That, it is something that most people who create content want. How do I get this better SEO? And you have to know that while you're creating it, not afterwards, to, like you said, like, okay, well, that was fun. I spent all that time and no one's reading it because they couldn't find it. If you know ahead of time that it's more likely to get attention, because you've done that, just all those things you said, you've done the research, you've created content that you think fits the need of people looking for it. And then you can get it into a tool that helps you do all of that correctly, because honestly, SEO is becoming much more technical than it ever has been, which I think is great, because it means, good semantic content that people want is more than ever the way to go. But that technology part is harder to understand and harder to get right. So yeah, there's so much to unpack, but technology doesn't solve people problems. Um, so we
Mhm.
have to the technology's there. The technology can do whatever we want it to do. We just have to get better at asking it to do the things that we need it to do.
Why do you think it's so difficult for teams, and I know it is in many, many companies, to actually talk to each other? And the thing that just came to my mind is when you were talking about you have to talk to each other, is when somebody makes an upgrade, that's debatable, an update to the website, right? And it's totally interfering with your workflow. So I get it. Sometimes you have to make certain updates because there's just no other way to do it currently, or whatnot. But why is it so difficult for people to talk to each other and say, "Hey, how do you do that now?" If I still remember this at Staymates Business Media, we made a big change, and I said, "This is what I want to do, and this is where we have to go." And there's no debate about that. Every industry is facing that same problem. How do you become digital first? Blah blah blah. And one of the longtime editors said, "Okay, I get it. But if you do that, here's what it means in this one piece." Now, we still went forward and we still updated this one piece. But if he didn't bring up what that one problem was, there would have been real problems, because the short term, it would have looked like the wrong decision. Long term would have been fine. Short term, not so much. But that conversation happened. How do we encourage people? How do we enable people, I guess maybe is the better term, to have those conversations? And why aren't they not having them?
Mm. Well, I think it's easier to answer why they're not, than how they can. How they can probably depends on the organization and the person, but why they're not, um, because they're in a hurry. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know what to talk about. Um, they're they're sometimes not even empowered to do anything but exactly what they're told in whatever way they can figure out to make it efficient for them. Um, you know, this idea of silos within organizations is real. Um, and so I think it, how do we change that? I mean, it's certainly a culture changes to connect all those silos, um, and make sure that they're feeding into each other the right way, um, and making it okay to ask questions, making it okay to experiment and get things wrong, and learn from that and make things better. Um, you know, make I don't want to say make deadlines more. Maybe it's making deadlines more realistic, and just being more realistic about planning. Spending more time planning, and then executing. So you get into a more of a measure twice, cut once way of working, which I don't think we're doing much of right now. Um, finding the companies that are doing it well and, follow their example. Talk to them, go to, there people are always talking at conferences about how things worked. They didn't get it right the first time probably. So, find out more about how they did work.
Mhm.
So, but that's going to be different for every organization because it's a different set of people with a different set of problems and audiences and stuff. But you have to know that it's possible, and start
Yeah.
working towards that. But it has to come also in research I've done just in the content strategy world, and I think this applies across any content area, is it has to come from the top down, not just, yeah, sure, go ahead, do that strategically, but we are
Yeah.
doing this strategically. And then also from a bottom up to get the people who have to do it every day to understand the most effective way to do their job, and then everything in between.
Yeah, it's very very interesting. I'm always struggling with conference talks, honestly, because I sometimes wonder how much of the real juicy details are being left out. Right? Like here's how I'm doing it, and certainly that is the very oversimplified version.
Right.
But doing it in real life, I actually do keep going back and forth to what the right strategy is. I'll give you an example. I think we probably need to set up something where teams share, right? This is what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it, and quick up highlights, right? And then people can have further discussions if it affects them, right? Not everything affects me in my job. Not everything affects everybody else that I'm doing in their job. But I've also seen situations where, yes, leadership encouraged everybody talking to everybody into turning a whole big mess, right? Because it's like a game of telephone. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
one person says something and it gets passed on, and and by the time it gets to the fifth person, everybody is thinking something completely different. So there's that challenge as well. You want people to collaborate, but sometimes stuff doesn't get played back correctly, or
Mhm.
sometimes it gets not doesn't get understand correctly. I'll give you one last example. I was working in a B2B company one time, a publishing company, and the comment I made was, yes, so it used to be publishers own content, and then the chief content officer owned content. And I said, yes, so content now reports up to the chief content officer. And somebody played that back as Christoph says he's in charge now. Well, that's not what Christoph said at all. He said this is how they set up the structure. So there's that problem at all. Now we got about 4 minutes left here, roughly. Let's talk about structured content. How, first of all, give people a quick overview. What is that? What's structured content? Why do we care about it? And how do we tie that into our workflow?
Yeah, structured content is content that is breaking down content into its smallest reasonable pieces, so that it can be interpreted by machines and humans and reused everywhere, remixed, restyled, truly reused those individual pieces of content. So kind of thinking of turning content into Lego bricks, so that you are creating it once and you can publish it everywhere. Um, it's it, it's quite different, but it's so much more effective and efficient. But it takes planning. You have to think about the structure, so it gets down to purpose. And so you're starting, it's kind of turning it into templates for a lot of content. You're still going to have web pages that don't have common structure, that are unique. But when you can find, I would say, just using an example of a website, 80 to 90% of content on any website is probably a content type, that can be broken into a bunch of different, 10 or 12 or however many common structures. And then that leaves 10 to 20 that are truly unique. We're not sure, we can't predict how things are going to be. And when you get to that, you can really, start moving faster. You can, increase your content velocity and, um, m- make pivots faster, publish new things faster, get new products launched faster, new digital initiatives, out the door faster. But again, it takes that time up front. And that's sometimes people don't feel like they have the time to do that. So it's important to see it as a long-term investment. It's one of the, just like any long-term investment, it's not going to pay off, it's not going to pay for itself immediately, but give it a few months, it will pay for itself. Give it another year or two, and it will provide massive dividends and allow everybody, from your designers to your content people to your product managers to your engineers, to do the things that they want to do, the fun stuff, and the stuff that really, really, truly matters.
And are we talking mostly about this is written content, or does that structure does that also work with media assets, videos, podcasts, etc.?
Yeah, it can be all. I mean, I think most of the time we're talking about text, but it truly is any type of content, video, audio, images, applying, being able to splice things up, tag things, and then use just a clip that you want, somewhere and from a video, song, music. So yeah, there's lots of ways, but yeah, I mean, the text is huge.
Text is huge, and of course, video, podcasting, live streaming, all those different things, they keep kind of bubbling up. I mean, it's not like the newest technology, quite frankly, but everybody seems to be hopping on that bandwagon. So, and we see that already. You search for something on Google, and they send you to the exact piece in the video that has the answer, as opposed to you having to watch the entire 50-minute video. Carrie, it was great to have you back on the show. Really appreciate you sharing your insights. Good to see you.
All right. Thanks.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review our show on your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to share this episode with your networks. We appreciate you. Until next time, let the best stories win.